Jesus. And good morning. Here we are again. Here we are in post July 4th, post midsummer. Hope you guys all had a great day yesterday. I heard the fireworks start to begin as I was going to bed last night. I don't know, maybe some of you still go to the fireworks. I don't know. It's not a big deal with me anymore, but I'm appreciative of them. So anyway, let's get started. We're in John chapter 13. We're just beginning chapter 13, which we are now within our study at the close of the public ministry of Jesus, end of chapter 12. And now we're moving into what is called the upper room, which will be 13 through, I believe, 17. And this is it's kind of like, well, it is not kind of, it is Jesus's words and actions towards his disciples in the context of the cross events. He's about to leave. So this is, as being Christ followers, not that the other section of the gospel is not important, but there's some vital. We're going to be on a neat adventure here with, in light of the ministry of Jesus, what is imparted to them and to us as Christ followers, given what is about to occur. So last time I did kind of a summary of the a summary, and I use. Guys, I lean towards this whole idea of the scapegoat theory as a way to understand what John is attempting to communicate to his first century audience. I'm not suggesting in any way that Jesus read Rene Girard. I mean, that's ridiculous, but I think this theory is one that helps me understand the events that are about to occur, and also what John is attempting to communicate. And I base that on what John wrote in regard to Caiaphas mentioning the scapegoat, and I've been looking at his actions and words within that light. So, that's kind of a where I'm coming from. We propose that mimetic desire, and that's part of the scapegoat theory, is a universal condition which always leads to some type of discord or violence among us humans. And we've looked at that, why that is out of that theory through Rene Girard, mimetic desire, and it creates violence. We're prone to violence as human beings. But we also, in the same breath, we identify discord as something that must be returned to harmony. So we value harmony. And so our method in doing so is the scapegoat mechanism, which is basically, we got to find someone to blame. It is within our human way of thinking that we've got to find someone or something to blame, because that makes us off the hook and makes us feel better about about us. So that's one side of it. On the other hand, we identified Jesus as exclusively unique in that he, being fully human, was subject to mimetic desire just because he lived here. However, all of his thoughts and actions are sourced from knowing that, and I've got this underlined, knowing that he is loved regardless. To me, this is a really big deal. And he's coming from this frame of mind 24/7. In doing so, he first shows us, then invites us fellow humans to embrace and then live out from this same perspective. That is a really important statement from my perspective. And I think it has everything to do with the mission and ministry of Jesus. And so that, again, from my perspective. Today, we're going to move into chapter 13. We're going to focus in on 1 through 3, but because of the text, I added, notice in white there, verses 4 and 5, because it kind of leaves us hanging in verse 3. So, therefore, the feast of the Passover was near. Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And during supper, the devil, having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had handed all things over to him, and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God, got up from supper and laid his outer garment aside. He took a towel and he tied it around himself. Then he poured water into the basin and began washing the disciples' feet and wiping them with the towel which he had tied around himself. And that's the text. Today, within the short section I just read, the author focuses on what Jesus knew, verses 1 through 3, with what he did, verses 4 and 5. As a reader, we are drawn into John's intent. We naturally are asking the why underlying these recorded spoken words and recorded events. We are seeking to understand these in reference to John's stated purpose recorded in 20, 30, and 31. So, we're asking, how does this all fit in? In this session, we're going to give our attention to verses 1 through 3, what Jesus knew. So this session is about what Jesus knew. And so let's take a look. Here we go. There are 5 things that we're going to identify in verses 1 through 3. Here's the text that we just read. And John is intentional, first of all, before we get to those 5 things, he's intentional in writing that the framework for this upper room experience is the Passover festival. Okay, that's really key here. And he states it in the opening verse 1. There's little doubt that the idea of echoing, this is an idea, maybe you've not heard it as echoing, but you're certainly familiar with it. Echoing words and events are important within the biblical text. What I mean by that, the Bible is filled with occurrences where a later writer cites an earlier quotation or event attaching a current application. We're all very familiar with this, and I'm calling that echoing. We just examined one such occasion where John quoted the prophet Isaiah in reference to the ministry of Jesus. And then a little more here. John connects Passover, familiar to his readers, very familiar to his readers, with the cross event, less familiar to his readers. So the point here is John is careful to point out that these cross events are on the within the context of the Passover festival. And so the first century readers would have been very familiar with what Passover is about. And John is correlating the cross event to this festival. Now, before the feast, okay, here's the text again, verses 1 through 3. And what I've done is I've underlined that area that we're gonna comment on. So the Passover has been mentioned, that the cross events are going to occur at this time. John points that out. And now we're going to look at five things that Jesus knew, followed by next week, or in 2 weeks rather, what he did. Knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart from this world. That's the underlined portion of the text. After the Passover connection, John states several, it's actually 5 aspects of what Jesus knew. First of all, he knew his hour had come to depart the world. Okay, this statement is clear in that Jesus knew at this moment that his death was about to occur. Okay, it's my belief, for what it's worth, that he was aware for quite some time. This is a big discussion. How much did Jesus know? Being fully human, fully God, what did he know and what did he not know? I am of the understanding that he knew about his impending death for the entirety of his public ministry. So that's where I stand on it. The horrific abuse about to happen to him was also authored by him. This is also vitally important. My belief, based on my understanding of John's gospel and Jesus's words within that gospel, is that no one took Jesus's life away from him. This wasn't something he fell into and they finally caught him. This is something he did. He gave his life. And that is vitally important as we look at the theories regarding what happened on the cross. And there are several theories. This is a mystery. We see him being subject to the authorities, but yet the belief that at least I have, and I think many of you, that he is actually allowing this and actually authored this death event to occur. And this is a mystery. This is one of the mystery of Christ, as Paul talks about. People have created theories to explain what happened on the cross, this mystery. Quite frankly, some of the theories are good. In my opinion, some of the theories are actually pretty damaging for our walk, for being a disciple. But regardless, I don't throw out what I don't like. I think it is wise to look at the entirety. The reason is because there have been some very thoughtful people throughout all of the church history have thought about this, and I think we need to respect that. And I think we need to think today, how do we think about this? But I think just throwing what I don't like out is a bad idea. I think we need to somehow think of this as a whole, and then come up with what we think is a good understanding of the why behind the cross event. Number 2, when Jesus states that he's departing to the Father, that's the next section. He's departing out of the world and he's going to the Father. He's stating his known destiny. This is important. Stated elsewhere is his known origin. There's I think 14 times within the text of this gospel, we have Jesus stating, I've come from the Father and I'm returning back to the Father. This is really important. Here is half of that. He's departing to the Father. At the end of the text, it mentions he's from the Father and going back to the Father. Jesus knew that he was from the Father, origin, and that he was returning to the Father, destiny. we have in this text the destiny is going to the Father, but it's very clear that he knew both origin and destiny. Boy, we want to put that in our heads. These tandem realizations created what I call a safe basis or safe place from which Jesus continually referenced. Regardless of circumstance, Jesus operated 24/7 from this place of absolute safety. That is, from my perspective, where Jesus is coming from, if to use our modern term. Next phrase, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Okay, we're going somewhere with this. Because he lived his life 24/7 from a place of absolute safety, he was able to love. He was able to love because he was free from himself. Ability to love is in direct correlation to being free from himself. From this safe place, he was free to express love and continue to do so even through the harshest of circumstances, which is about to occur, the cross, betrayal and the cross. 4, this next text, and during supper, the devil, having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him. So John is setting the stage for what is about to occur. So even though unstated here, we know from elsewhere that Jesus was fully aware of Judas's intent. Okay, that's well in that's in the text. John is showing the depth of love, motivation expressed by Jesus, even in the face of personal betrayal through Judas. To experience betrayal is a most severe human exposure. Some of you have probably experienced betrayal. The severity of betrayal is universally understood. For one to continue to love while being betrayed is what we need to take note of. Jesus continued to love in the face of known betrayal. Number 5, Jesus, knowing that the Father had handed all things over to him and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God. Okay, that's where we're leaving that. Again, we're looking at 5 things Jesus knew. John is stacking the deck with all of these truths, and then we are going to interpret what Jesus knew or what Jesus did in light of these 5 things Jesus knew. Jesus knew, number 5, what he had been given. Coming to a place of awareness in regard to what one has been given is a matter of time. We're in different places. It's like waking up. As one wakes up, one is able to actually walk into a much more meaningful grasp regarding how to live one's life. So I'm making a statement that is you and I in our discipleship journey wake up, we are able to enter into and waking up to what we've been given. We are able to walk in a more meaningful, Christ-like way of living our lives. That's the idea. So here's a summary. I've got a diagram that illustrates what these 3 verses are about, and it summarizes what Jesus knew. So we've got origin and we've got destiny, and he is absolutely clear on both. He has stated it at a minimum of 14 times. He knew he was from the Father, and he knew he was returning to the Father. And those two realizations together create, when they're bracketed, they create a safe place, a safe perspective. He is operating out of safety. That is pretty critical, number one. And because he's operating out of safety, he is free to love continually. That is a representation of verses 1-3. Love continually. He loved them to the end. Now, I'm transposing, actually, I'm doing this in a logical presentation, but actually this oval is a framework. There's an underlying framework behind everything. This is a major grid where Jesus is coming from. And I put it in at the end rather than the beginning. And then because I think it's more in sync with how the text is laid out. So this framework, this grid, this overarching perspective is this as a comprehensive, I call it a framework of thinking. This is how Jesus thinks. He knew what he had been given to him 24/7. He never doubted and John calls it the relationship with the Father. This is the same thing, John. The relationship with the Father, which had an origin and a destiny, was his governing motivation throughout his entire earthly ministry. And that's how he's thinking. Verse 3. Now, what does this mean for us? Let's now look at the same idea, because I think it's applicable. I think it's critically important for us as Christ followers. But there is a sequence difference as I see it, and I'm going to lay it out. We're going to the same place, the same components, but just bear with me as I think I'm going to give a logical, how I see step-by-step process for us to arrive at the same location that he's inviting us into. And so here it is. First of all, I think it's healthy for you and I to dwell on origin. Okay, I think it's really good for us to think about, how did I get here? How did anything get here? Guys, when we really ponder this in our heads, we've got to come to the realization that I had nothing to do with this. I am here entirely because some other means, and I believe is God Almighty, loved me and thought of you and put me here so I could have breath. I mean, I had nothing to do with this, nothing whatsoever. That is a good place to go in our heads, number one. Number two, dwelling on origin should lead me to a fuller appreciation of what I have been given. If we can dwell on this, I think it moves us to health in our thinking. I have opportunity to think about the people who have influenced me in my life and the shoulders of people that I have stood upon to bring me to a place today where I am. This is good thinking. This is wholesome way of thinking. The very fact that I'm alive, it's life, guys, life is a gift. It's been given to us. I had nothing to do with it. And that in itself should lead me to a fuller appreciation of what I have been given. Number three, and now this is where I induce the framework, because we still have, we're talking about origin, but I don't think we think of destiny. I think, actually, I think that most of us as believers are pretty foggy on this about destiny. And I think it really makes good sense to start with origin and then move towards the destiny. This then, okay, once I realize what I've been given, then that's going to lead me to origin, or I mean to destiny. This will lead me to a more comprehensive understanding. First of all, is safety. I got to go to safety first. Note the framework of safety, guys. I think it would really do us, the church at large, well, to think about this framework. Do I operate in my head, in my theological beliefs? Do I think that I'm in a place of safety, or not? Because I think that affects everything in regard to how we live today. Am I operating out of safety, or am I not? It's one or the other. Number 3B, if I possess a more comprehensive understanding of my own safety, it will, I think, guys, I'm landed on the fact that I think we are in a safe place. I think the universe is a safe place. It's we as humans who have made it a very dangerous place. If I possess a more comprehensive understanding of my own safety, it will also include an understanding of my destiny. Now, you guys are getting hit with this for the first time, this morning. I've been thinking about this, and the slides are going to be on the website, Christ and Rockies, and you can look at this sequence. But I think for us to think about destiny, we call it heaven. I think a good way to get to there is through this. That's not how I entered into it. I entered into destiny as the means by which why Jesus came. That when I pray a prayer, and I come from an evangelical perspective, like most of you, if not all of you, we are a sinner. We are naturally bad, and we need a goodness, which is Christ. And by praying a prayer, I automatically transpose to this place of destiny. I think that has some problems with it in regard to how we live life today. And of course, this, is just how I've derived it. But there is a destiny, and as I come to it through this framework, this 1, 2, 3, 4. If I move to destiny through origin, through this place of safety, it starts to make a lot more sense. So 3B, if I possess more comprehensive understanding of my own safety, it will include understanding of my destiny. Does God love me unconditionally or not? That is a question. Now, the end result of this whole thing, 1, 2, 3A, 3B, and 4, is I am now, if I'm moving in this direction, in following the example of Jesus, I am now much more free of me. And that results in the ability to love other people continually. being free of me is the process that I'm invited into in order to express the love of Christ uh, continually. So that's how it relates. So here's our. I have left a lot of time for discussion because I'd like to get your thoughts on this. And believe me, I realize you've only heard this last 20 minutes or so. So bear with me. In this session, we propose that as one begins to embrace, this is the application, as you and I begin to embrace what we've been given, that same person will move away from their own self-created constructs of thinking. This, in my mind, is what gets in the way. It's what we create. This I'm labeling free from self. Being free from self is a segue into gaining the capacity to love others as Jesus demonstrated. He's been demonstrating it all along. And the reason he can do that is because he's free from himself. So in this context, this is your thoughts, comments, questions, guys, doubts, concerns regarding this proposed idea. We may need to go back and look at the idea. I'd love to get your input. Let's talk about this idea of embracing our origin, embracing our destiny, safe place, which is huge, and this capacity then leading us to a place of continually expressing the love of Christ within our life. So let's talk about that. And Jeff, I know you got comments, buddy.
Yeah, I do. I was thinking about what you said earlier, and you said that it was stated 14 times.
It's what?
It was stated 14 times in John.
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
That Jesus said, I have come from the Father. To me, in my life, that is key to, and it is my belief that as human beings, and I've demonstrated it in my own life, that we are selfish. If I can continually go back to that origin, knowing that I am of the Father, that will allow me to get past that selfishness. But I also have to look to what my destiny is. And if I can't remember that I have come from the Father, then I doubt that I'm going back to the Father. So I can't live with this idea of what is it? Free of self. I can't do that if I'm doubting my destiny. So I have to continually go back and say to myself, I am a miserable wretch to begin with, but because of Christ, I am now of the Father. I am a child of the King. Therefore, my destiny is with him. And if I can keep going back to that, that allows me to live in a way that is much more selfless. And in doing that, I can then love, hopefully, the way Christ loved.
You in an amazing, concise way, you stated how I'm thinking about this. You've made, Jeff, the big step from what we see Jesus doing to how you feel you live your life. What you stated, Jeff, is that you're being invited into the same thing that Jesus is demonstrating. And that in itself is a huge step. And you said it, You said it really well, at least what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Um,
and
Go ahead.
my point was that it is a continual process. I can't say to myself once
Yeah,
that I am a child of God and then be given the ability to live a selfless life. I have
that's
to
right.
continually go back and remind myself that I'm a child of the King. Therefore, my destiny is with him. Therefore, I can love selflessly and I can and live a life where I can love others, in spite of my own selfishness and their unlovability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I too believe, Jeff, that it's not a place of arrival. It's a place of constant invitation over and over again. I will say experientially that as I'm aging, I'm becoming more aware and I can catch myself quicker. I will say that, but it's still it's a constant, it's a daily challenge,
Yeah.
many times a day. Um, oh, that's me. The boxes are on me because I'm talking. I'd like to hear from you guys though.
This is really, I don't know whether corny's the right label for this or not. This just came out of nowhere. But I think all of us, maybe with the exception of Jeff, I don't know. Most of us are quite a bit older. There was a song years ago called, and I don't remember the title of it. It goes, love and marriage, they go together like a horse and carriage. You
Oh
remember that?
yeah,
The love is where we have come from. The marriage is the destiny that we have.
wow.
And you can't have one without the other.
Hmm.
Or you don't have an effective life. You don't have a marriage if you don't have both the pieces. So like I say, that's out of left field, but that's what came to me and it makes sense to me. So there you have it.
Dave, that is I'll be thinking about that.
The
Love.
Frank Sinatra reference. How could you go wrong?
I hate never don't
uh,
get me started on him, but anyway.
Love is I think love is critically important. It's something existing and it is the very nature of God Almighty.
It's the very source of from whence we've come.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, this hypostatic union is difficult for me to relate to, or all of us, I suppose, because
Yes.
it's a unique condition. But I think Jesus knew enough of the scriptures and his experiential walk with God to know that God's supply is limitless in reference to what Jesus needed and had. And so Jesus could dispense that without fear of I'm going to run out of this. I can't love these people that are beating me because then I won't have enough love to give to the people who deserve it. So he was just he was forever supplied with what he needed and knowing that it would never run out. And I think that, I mean, it's sort of a profane analogy. I think of that with money in my life.
Yeah.
When I feel comfortable with my bank account, I'm a lot more generous uh, when I see need than when I'm running low on funds. So I could be more Jesus-like with the guy in the street or the church or charities that approach me for help. I can say, yeah, I'll give him money. What the heck? I got plenty. I'm good. This is not going to hurt me. I'm not going to be at a deficit if I do this. But there are times in my month, my financial month, where it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of running short here,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to help you because I don't have it. But the need on their end is the same, regardless of my bank account. This guy is still hungry. You know,
Yeah.
if he happens to meet me when I'm fat, then he's going to get fed. And if he happens to meet me when I'm lean, then he's not.
Yeah.
I think Jesus tapped into a place where he was always aware
Yeah.
that I'm never going to run out of the love of God.
Yeah.
I'm never going to run out of God's supply. So I can give freely because I'm not trapped. I think you said it was his own self-created construct of thinking. He didn't have that. He
Yeah.
had God's construct of thinking.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the fountain that never ends. So I mean that's a great place to be. And like Jeff said, it's a daily, if not moment to moment, renewing of the mind to remember that it's not coming out of Vince's ability to supply.
Yeah.
It's coming out of God's ability to provide, which is two different bank accounts, totally. You know?
Yeah, that's really true. And I love the idea of bank account because we all know what that's like. We all know what it's like to have um, deficit. I mean, we're getting down to the end, and that tends to tighten me up. But in a real sense, here Jesus is operating out of 100% capacity all the time. He feels he has capacity to give. I feel that way sometimes, you feel that way sometimes we don't. But in a real sense, if we go to this place of origin and destiny, like Jeff has talked about, it will give us that capacity. That's how I understand what you just said. Yeah. Tatsi, well, what are your thoughts?
Um, I was wondering on this complete safety thing. What about the what is your feeling about how sacrifice fits into this? And also the passages, the night before where he's praying and he's sweating blood kind of a thing. So I'm just wondering how that concept of complete safety fits into that passage and also into the concept of sacrifice. And this is probably not a good quote, okay? But I remember early in my journey, I was re-listening to The Road Less Traveled, and Scott Peck kind of brings up the point of Jesus, when he's being crucified, was there a 10% element of doubt that, that he was going to be raised again, kind of a thing. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that were, Mike.
Man, Tassi, that is a very astute and probing question that is in the back of all of our minds. Great question. Great question. Thank you. I don't have a definitive answer. I mean, I know what I've been taught. I think, again, what actually happened on the cross. There are theories, and we can talk about those theories as we go. I have landed at this stage of life. I believe this, that no one took the life of Jesus away from him. He gave it. If someone were to say, did Jesus die for your sins? Absolutely. But the mechanism of that, that is up for question. The easy answer is, well, God required a sacrifice and Jesus paid that sacrifice. I personally see that there's some problems with that. And that is one of the theories, penal substitutionary atonement. That is one of many theories that it's relatively new. And I think I don't think it's a very good one. Now, what Jesus what Jesus experienced on the cross, we got some time to look at this. I don't really have the answer to your question. When Jesus said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? How do we put that within that? It's certainly expressing doubt and question. What does that mean for you and I? I don't really know. I mean, I think we're going to discuss it, and I'm excited to get there, but I don't have a definitive answer for that. So I think, there's one theory that the PSA penal substitutionary theory came out of later. Anselm of the 12th century came up with the idea of God's satisfaction, that something needed to be satisfied on God's behalf, and Jesus was that satisfaction. I think there is some truth to that, but I think we have taken it, and what we've done with that is really unfortunate. And it has everything to do with how I live my life. Am I safe or not? There are well-meaning Christian people living and breathing today that they're white knuckling, thinking, am I in or am I out? Does God love me? They look at Jesus as God as this wrathful being that has to be satisfied, and Jesus is standing in between myself and God, and somehow if Jesus wasn't there, God would hate me. That puts us into a really unfortunate way of thinking about God Almighty. Does God love me or not? And that is a huge question. And Tatsi, I so appreciate that question. I don't have a definitive answer, but I will say I'm moving a lot. I believe the universe is a safe place. I do. Yeah, go ahead.
I think
Well,
part of
right, yeah.
too is the incredibly beautiful, complex mystery of this Jesus being fully God and fully man.
Yeah.
I believe that his utterance on the cross, Eli, Eli, Hava Sabachthani, I think that was the man calling out in the flesh. I don't think that was Jesus, the Son of God, calling out, because that man, as you say, knew where he had come from and where he was going.
Yeah.
But I think his cry out on the cross is representative of what each of us find ourselves in at some point in time, where we don't maybe use the same phraseology or whatever, but we call out in our flesh and say, God, where are you? Why
Yes.
can't you fix this? Why, God, where are you? Why have you left me alone? And I think that's the humanness as the process of him giving himself entirely to really remove that. When, as you say, we know where we've come from and where we're going, which is where it is. So,
The reason I also bring it up is that early on and even now, what happens to me is sometimes in my walk, I do things, as a way of saying, this is my works, okay, or whatever, my good works, okay, and that's what's gonna get me into God's good graces or get me saved or whatever kind of a thing. So it's that kind of like the earning kind of a thing rather than the unconditional, belief or whatever. And I find myself every once in a while doing that. Okay, I'm doing these good works. You're not necessarily, in the context of a pure, love kind of a thing, but also in terms of a selfish earning type of earning my salvation or the love of God or whatever. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Tatsi, you are absolutely clear and you're so transparent and you're representing 100% of where my experience. I know theologically, I am theologically in my head, I am safe, but experientially, I still at times go back to trying to do things to make God like me. And that therein is the problem. And I think it's the human propensity to think that we can do something to make God like us.
Yeah.
It becomes experientially a relationship where at the beginning we adopt the love of God, but I speak with forked tongue. When I fall short of what I think it should be, or sin, then I try to do something in my own effort in order to make God like me again. And the thing I'm throwing out, what's wrong with this picture? I mean,
Yeah.
God is a loving father.
I read a thing this week that was kind of crazy, but it blessed me. When God called me into his family, I already took into account that I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
was no surprise because I got that. I know who
Yeah.
you are. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah. I would say this is that as human, and we're all human, it's hard for us to embrace. I think it's naturally hard for us to embrace that idea. That is a long. That's not something we just. Well, maybe some of us, if we really bottom out, we can somehow embrace the love of God. But Tatsi, I think what you said is part of the journey, and it's part of something we're going to be dealing with from here on out. So, thank you for that. Thank you for the question and your transparency on that, and you're reflecting what many, if not all of us, feel. Guys, it's 8:03, and I'm sorry to cut it up. We're just getting going. Wow, but we're going to look at next week, or actually in 2 weeks. I've got camp next week. So on the 19th, we'll be back and we'll look at verses 4 and 5, which is what Jesus did, which is an amazing, it's an amazing example. And there's so many correlations in there about washing the disciples' feet. We're going to look at that in light of what we just looked at here today. So have a good rest of your week, guys. And thanks for joining in. Thanks for your participation, and bye for now.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
See you guys.
All right.